Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Measuring Maryland's Champion Trees event. Tonight, we're joined by Joli McCathran, co-chair of the Maryland Big Trees program. Please remain muted during the presentation. We will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. And if you feel more comfortable doing so, you can go ahead and type your questions in the chat and we can read them for you. So, Joli, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you for inviting me. Tookie asked if I would do this some time ago, and we just were counting the years. It's been maybe 30 since we used to carpool together to and from Annapolis, but at least 30. My name is Joli McCathran, and I'm a member of the Montgomery County Forestry Board. I'm a member of the Maryland Forestry Foundation. I'm president of the Maryland Association of Forestry Boards, and I'm a member of the National Cadre of Tree Measurers through American Forests. So all of this pulls together, and what we do is we measure trees throughout the state, champion trees, and I have some a little more to teach you about that program, and then some trees to show you. And I really tried to get some in your area that were publicly accessible, because they are on our website, and we have a county website and a state website. So we'll go ahead and get started. And again, there can be questions at the end, or if you wish to type them in, that would be fine too. So my husband's going to plug me in here. Perfect. Okay, does that work for everybody? Okay, I'm seeing head shake yes. Okay, so I'm really specifically talking about trees of Montgomery County, because this is a Montgomery County program. I've done programs all over the state trying to feature different counties. We are under the auspices and insurance, et cetera, of the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. And we are strongly supported by the Maryland Association of the Forest Conservancy District Boards. And each board, there's a board for each county and for the city of Baltimore. So we have 24 boards statewide, and some do their own tree programs like Montgomery County does, and some just do the Maryland Big Tree program, but we can get into that a little later. This particular website is our state, the state website, the mdbigtrees.org. It's fairly user-friendly, and you're welcome to go on that, or the Montgomery County one. And if you type in Montgomery County Forestry Board, you'll see links to the big trees. So I'm going to move on. Okay, that didn't work. How do I? Oh, okay. So here are the goals of our programs. People ask why we're doing this. So our goal is to identify the largest trees of native species statewide. We do get out into some cultivars and different species, but we really try hard to stay within native species. It's not always possible, but we do make notations whether they're native, non-native, invasive, whether they're hybridized. We're also trying to identify historic trees, or ones that have historic significance. And we have quite a few, and many proud owners who love to tell us the story of their trees. We've maintain and register our trees on the database for the state, and we do the measuring. My husband and I have a little van camper, and we go out and measure the trees, and I'll go through that point system as well. We monitor the growth of those trees or the demise of those trees, and then I have the responsibility of nominating the eligible trees to American Forests for the National Register of Champion Trees. And that also is a website they did not publish last year for some internal reasons, and I'm hoping they're going to do it again in the fall. Right now, I think Montgomery County has 7 trees on the national list, but that is also on the website as well. Anyway, that's a really fun program. That's where my national cadre work comes into play there. And then, of course, we maintain the website, and we're doing things like this today for public education to share with folks and let them be interested. And I know we've got Ralph Buglas, who's on, who I've measured trees with, and Stan Fisher, who's a member of the board, and he's helped measure some trees. So I'm glad to see they're there. And if I may say anything wrong, they're allowed to correct me. All right. Okay, so We are coming up upon our 100th year of measuring trees in the United States. Fred Besley was Maryland's first state forester, and he developed the formula, which we're going to go over, in 1925, and that is now used almost nationwide. Every state has a state coordinator for American forests, and I'm it for Maryland. So I report those trees, and then I have to go and verify those trees or get them verified. And one day Ralph and I were out and we came across a tree. I'll have to remember it in a minute. Oh, a bladdernut tree. And it's going to be the national champion next time they publish it. It's really small, but you know, numbers don't always have to be big. So this is a picture of Fred Besley. And what he does and how we do this is we take the inches of the tree at 4.5 feet, so breast diameter height, and we measure that, and we do that in inches, and that gives us a number. And then we take the height of the tree several different ways, which I will show you. And then we take the average crown spread. So we do both north, south, east, west, and we take 1/4 of that, and that equals the points for that tree. And that tree, that's how we balance all the trees together. So we can compare literally apples to oranges, because we are trying to do the tree work. And of course, there are variations in that by multi-trunks, and we'll be discussing that as well. So I just wanted to give you the basis for the program. First one that ever did it, and we're still proud that he was that man who put this together. So, all right, Ken, I'm not going forward again. What I'm doing. Next one. Oh, there you go. So I just want to get a little more detail of what we do when we're on the site. Anybody can nominate a tree. You don't have to own it. You can just know about it. If it's a privately owned tree, we do need to get permission to come on the property, of course, because we don't want to violate any trust with the public. And so we do get a permissions form to come on the property, and we give certificates out to those owners. And when we first get there, we of course observe the tree, make any notes on it. And the first thing we do is usually measure the circumference at 4.5 feet, the breast height diameter. And there we are with the circumference in inches. And then we stand back. This is an example if we were using a clinometer, and we stand back 100 feet, and then we shoot the height with that tool. And we have now, if anyone wants to donate a drone, I'd love to measure drone. We're actually trying to work on that. It's a little more expensive than I planned. And I think you have to have some kind of license, but we're not quite there yet. But so this is how we get the first two numbers. So this is how we get the number for the circumference. Okay. And then in inches, and then we measure the height in feet. And I'm going to try and go forward by myself here. Oh, good. So here's where we get the 25% of the crown. So we're doing this from the top of the tree, as you can see. So we're going north, south, east, west, and we're coming up with the average. We add those two numbers together. We get divided by 2 and then divided by 4. And that gives us a point system. So we take 25% of that crown, and that's added into the total. So just to be clear on the bottom, here we go. We've got the height in feet, circumference in inches, and 25 feet equals the total point of a tree. So those are our goals when we meet up with a tree, wherever it may be. And I've had a few trees change addresses at times because fences or properties owned, but you know, sometimes they're on different properties when you get out to them, but we'll have fun with that. So here are the very basic tools we use. Of course, we just need a standard tape measure, just a regular, any old inch tape measure. We have a clinometer. I personally use the laser, and that measure height. And then we GPS and record the location of the tree. And of course, if it's publicly accessible, then that information is also on the website. So these are just a couple of tools we use to measure. So the first one I want to show you is actually Maryland's largest known tree. And I think about, this was in the promo advertisement for this program, and I thought I would just start out with it. It's a sycamore tree. It's along the Sino Canal. So John Walls, you said, is an expert, and I'll bet you donuts to dollars he's been to this tree. So if we get the circumference, here's our first example. We get 326 inches in circumference. It's right now 145 feet tall. And the average crown width was 111. We divide that by 4, we get 28, and the tree's 499. That's the total points. So this is a county and a state champion. So this is compared to all the other sycamores statewide. And last year, the folks in Harford County measured a tree that was 2 points higher. So it was 501 points. We in Maryland, any tree within 5 points of each other is considered a quadruple champion. So you can have more than one champion, and that does occur often. And we crowned it. We had both these two trees up there, and I got a call about 3 weeks later that the other tree had just virtually collapsed and is no longer. So this one grabbed the title back of the Maryland's largest known tree. And the governor, O'Malley at the time, did write a certificate for this tree, and it is still recognized. So it is publicly accessible. If water's up along the C&O Canal, you're not going to get to it very easily. There's some people who want to build a bridge to it, and the county said no. So it's been up and down in the politics, but it's a pretty heavily visited tree, and it's you have to go walk to the Potomac River and then go upstream about 3/4 of a mile to get to it, but it is well worth the walk. So the man on the picture on, I guess it's my right, is Joe Howard. And Joe is the one who got me into this program. Joe was a teacher, principal in Montgomery County for many, many years. And he started the outdoor education program for Montgomery County students. And he, about 20 years ago, talked me into joining him and kind of groomed me to come on the forestry board, which is how I got started. And the man in the other picture, who's on the higher side of this tree, is Vince. And he's a new guy we've been working with for a couple of years, and he's just enthusiastic and fantastic. So the one thing I do want to say about is you can see that there's a high and low circumference on this tree. Joe is standing at the bottom and Vince is standing at the top. And because this is, because of the height, we have to do it in the middle. So we have to do a high and a low and average those to get the circumference. I would like to say that the bottom circumference of this tree is 30 feet. So that's a huge tree. So I just want to point out how big that is. Also, the 499 is rather impressive. The largest tree ever measured in the state of Maryland, to my knowledge, was the Y oak, which is a white oak that was in Talbot County, and it failed. And I think it was 508 points. We're interested in any tree that's 300 or more points. So when we get up into the 400s or 500s, we are really, really excited. So this one makes your little heart pitter patter when you're out there trying to find trees. Right behind it is our county champion cottonwood tree. And this is an eastern cottonwood. It has this huge burl on it. So the first time we went out to measure it, I think we included the burl, and we later learned we can't do that. Our rules and regulations kind of changed, so we had to go above it. So the next time we went out there, we had to go above it, but the tree was underwater, which is why Vince is standing on this log in the water. And we finally got to it a third time and got the measurements, and it's right there. It's just a beautiful tree. So if you go out to one, make sure you see the other. And at 364 points, that's an exciting tree. But we have kind of found that we kind of had to determine where to do that measurement to be fair and equal to all the other trees or like trees in the county. But it's a beautiful example of the trees that are right next to each other. So make sure you go see this tree too. Not all of them have to be huge. This is a Black Haw viburnum. It's in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's just on the side of this little house. And if you can see the picture on the left, that is a pretty big viburnum. This actually is a national champion. It was a tri-champion for a while. One died, so I believe now it's a state. It's a state county. It's county, state, and still a national champion. And yet it's only 111 points, but it has as much value to us as a champion tree as any of the others. So this lady, this very, very elderly lady, owned it for many, many, many years. And we have to remeasure the trees every 10 years to keep them in the program. And we went out there one day, and the lady was no longer in the house. I don't know if she'd passed or if she was living somewhere else, but there was the tree still standing there. So That was a 10-year remeasure visit. It's a fun little tree. This one is on private property. It's a southern catalpa tree. They're a little rare in Maryland. It's in Gaithersburg. It's 332 points. Character galore on this tree. You can see in the picture on the left all those burls and things kind of growing on the tree. It has this twirl look. The most interesting thing to me about this one is the owner has a picture taken from the bell tower of Grace United Methodist Church on Route 355. And it was taken in 2009. And you can still see this picture above the tree line and the house lines. So we know how old approximately this tree is because it has been there for so long. It's a gorgeous and a more unusual tree. We only have a couple of southern catalpas, but I think it's Baltimore County has the national southern catalpa. So these two, there's a little difference between them, so we can't call them co. Another wonderful tree to visit. Takes up the entire backyard and almost 2 other neighbors' yards, but really pretty tree. And he's very generous about letting people on to see it. So let me know if you ever want to see it. I can make arrangements. This is a gorgeous tree that we discovered just last year. It's up in Brookville, as you can see. It's a shagbark hickory. And if you notice the picture on the left, the bark is kind of exfoliating, sort of peeling off. And that's characteristic of this tree. They're not the most common tree in Montgomery County, but they are in Ohio and some of the other Midwestern areas. And it doesn't even make 300 points, but it's still the Montgomery County champion. And this is just one of those ones that somebody saw and nominated to us, and we went out and went, how gorgeous can you be? I mean, it's 109 feet tall, and compared to the little men at the bottom, it's a really beautiful tree. So this is a great example of a tree we don't see every day, but is indigenous to this area and just is a fine example of a beautiful, beautiful shagbark hickory. This is one of my favorite trees in the county. This is the one in the Sandy Spring Friends House meeting graveyard, and it's been there for some time. It's a yellow poplar, and of course at 423 points, it's very large. We do a lot of tree tours through Brookside Gardens, through there's a conservancy group that's up county. It might be Sugarloaf Conservancy that does a couple a year. And this tree is often on it because it's a great tree. And one of our rules of visiting these champion trees is you have to walk up and touch them. You cannot appreciate the size of it until you are standing right at the foot of the base of that tree and touching it with your hand. It's just, I mean, the circumference is 270 inches. So it's a pretty magnificent tree. It's interesting that these were very popular. They grew on farms. We actually have a larger one that's on the property of Hubert Blake High School, and Prince George's County has all the other champions. We have some that are very large, this one and the one on Hubie Blake, and then they have 3 or 4 before it gets back to Montgomery County with some large ones. So this is a tree to definitely go visit. Really pretty tree. This is one I put up because I wanted you to see it. It's near you. It's in Germantown. I can't remember the name of the road it's on, but this at one time was a farm property, and we can go back and look at the archives in some of these old records or old satellite pictures, which are how old? Only as old as the satellite process. But we can see where this tree was on the lane to a farm, and it's clearly been preserved and taken care of by the townhome group that owns it. You can see the sapsuckers have kind of been nibbling on it, and it's a beautiful tree and very well cared for. Again, it's not a native, but it will grow here, so we call it an introduced tree, and that is allowed. This is one of the ones that's slightly outside that boundary, but we're going to accept it because it is an unusual tree. And please notice this is not the county nor the state champion, and still with 423 points. I believe the state champion or the county champion is on what's now Nature Forward, which was the Audubon Society in Chevy Chase. And that tree is a magnificent specimen to visit. This one's a little smaller, but I love seeing that old picture of it from, I don't even know the year of it, but it was clearly an old farm lane. Really pretty tree with the blue needles, and just a very handsome example. This is one that's up your way in Germantown. This is my little grandson in the picture. He helped me measure trees last year. And this is where we get into the multi-trunks. We have 2 schools of thumb when we hit a tree like this. If the tree does not normally grow in a multi-trunk pattern, we measure the largest trunk at 4.5 feet. But if it is known, and in this case it is known, that weeping cherries divide and split into multi-trunks, very often we're allowed to measure at the narrowest point below the 4.5 feet mark. And that is how we try and measure all of them statewide. This isn't that big of a tree. Again, it's not the county champion, but it's a really beautiful example. And the man nominated it and said, I just think it's really pretty. And there we were measuring it. And I think if you look down in the picture on the right, there's a little person underneath it, slightly to the right of the trunk, just a little ways over. So it is actually quite a big spread on that tree, because it's 70 feet average, and it was fairly even, but a beautiful tree. So I'm teaching my next generation how to do this with me. It's really fun. This is one that you can go visit. This is at the, it's a Normand fir. And this is at the Catholic Church, St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. We don't list it as publicly accessible, but I think, well, maybe we do. I think the church does say, please stop in the office if you're going to visit this tree. And we had all kinds of designs and opinions on what type of tree this was. And we finally determined for sure, we had an expert come out, and it was determined to be a Normand fir. It's a beautiful tree. You don't even have to get out of your car. As you can see in the picture on the right, you can just drive up to it, but you should get out to go touch it still. But it's a beautiful county and state champion tree. And it's right in our, in our back door. So go visit this tree as well. We do have a listing online of publicly accessible trees, and many churches have allowed us to put on there where they're located. We do it by address and then coordinates as well, for those who do geocaching or other types of hobbies with coordinates. This one was one that was a very unusual tree, but a gorgeous tree. It is the county and state champion. It's called a water oak. The circumference, as you can see, is 180 feet, and it takes up this entire backyard. And I popped in a little picture of the leaves because it doesn't look traditionally what the oak you all vision, I vision, the white oak, the red oaks. And this is a black oak, sometimes they're called, but water oak is the more common. It's just a gorgeous tree. It takes up this whole backyard and is a very, very beautiful tree. But if you find one of these and you see one nominated, because we do need, I think we only have 2 in our program right now in the county, and it's one we'd love to see more of. And it's this, this being the state champion, we were really proud, and the owner was absolutely thrilled and is taking very, very good care of this tree. But I just thought I'd show the leaves to, to show you the different types of oaks, because there are help me Stan and Ralph, there must be 300 oaks out there. So, and they hybridize very easily. Hence you get all kinds of cultivars. What we normally do is we determine on the site which has the stronger characteristics. If we think it's a cross between something, we say, well, okay, it's a little more white oaky looking than this, and we try to make a determination. Or we can take samples and send it to some people who we have some contacts who really are able to identify specifically oaks, and we've used this when we've really had conflicts about which way we think it is. This is the Travilla oak, and this is also publicly accessible, and it's on Travilla Road in Potomac. And this, I hope you all saw the article in the Washington Post on Saturday with the linden oak and the demise of that tree. And I think it's being taken down next week. And the pictures from the article were mine, as well as a couple quotes from me about it. It's really a sad loss. It was our largest white oak. It was the county champion. So people now want to know what's our largest white oak, which is the Maryland state tree. And this is that tree. It's very well cared for. Again, it's got lightning arresters in it. The owner is extremely proud of it. He lets people on site to visit it. And we try and collect acorns every year from this tree to take to the state nursery. And the U.S. Forest Service is doing a white oak project at the Slyburn Arboretum in Baltimore. And I've sent up acorns from this tree, and they mark them and monitor them and see how they grow. So I'm hoping to see more of these. It's a gorgeous old tree. There are picnic tables there. Take your family for a picnic and enjoy, because it's a very beautiful tree. And 335 white oaks tend to not be very tall, especially if they were specimen trees or edges of farms or boundaries, because they were not competing with the woods for height. We have a magnificent one in, I think, Charles County that's so narrow and tall. I about fell over when I measured the height. And I think it's the tallest white oak in the state, because it's in the middle of this woods. And I'm hoping, I'm in the process of trying to start a semi-centennial tree program, because in 1976, the Department of Natural Resources and the Forest Services around the state did a bicentennial tree program. I'm now trying to add 50 years to those trees and say, okay, how many are still alive? We had 24 of them in Montgomery County in 1976, and this is the only one left. So I'm hoping that this can stay alive and continue to grow and be enjoyed for generations to come. It's got a little rot on the other side of it, and the back side of it, but the owner is having it treated, and it's very well cared for again, which I'm really glad, because he's a great steward to this tree. Okay, here, Joe and I, this is our county champion yellow poplar, the Liriodendron. And it's, as you may know, it's related to the rhododendrons. It's in the same family of trees. And at 449 points, it's massive. And the circumference, as you can see, is 318. It's really interesting. I bring this tree up a lot statewide because it is the county champion. I thought it was the state co-champion. I could have accidentally omitted that, excuse me. But the last time Joe and I were there measuring, there's myself and Joe, and the big hole that's down on the left, we were standing there, and I can't even remember who was taking the picture. All I remember is these wasps the size of Gibraltar came out of that hole and started chasing us. I think they're called black-faced wasps, and I've never run so fast in my entire life. It was an experience. This tree has seen its better days. It's only 109 feet tall. It's been struck by lightning. It's been struck again by lightning. And one time I did a program and a man came up to me and he said, "Why didn't you put that tree in?" And I said, "Isn't that funny? I usually do, but I wasn't in Montgomery County. I was on the Eastern Shore." And he proceeded to tell me his story of it. And the first time it was struck by lightning, he was on the fire squad that had to come and put the fire out. And even the picture on the left, if you can see inside a little bit there, it's really dark, and that's left over from the fire in the tree. Lost a significant amount of height, but the circumference is so wide that it still holds that champion status. So we've measured this 3 times now in the last 20 years, and it's still hanging in there. And it's one you can go visit on site. They do ask that you call before you visit, but it is publicly accessible. So go see this one. This one I put in because it's at Summit Hall in Boer Park in Gaithersburg. It's called an Empress tree, or Polonia. It is the county and state champion, and the Kellerman family who had this farm, she grew up on the farm and married her husband, and she lived on it until recently. If anybody knows where she is, I'd really like to know, because I've kind of lost track of Frances Kellerman. But this tree is now owned by the city of Gaithersburg. It's had fires under it from people fooling around with it. It's had a lot of a little bit of vandalism, let's say, which I don't care for at all, of course. And we've had some other bad things happen, but this is really an unusual tree. It's not, again, not native, but it is introduced and even somewhat naturalized in this area. So it's a beautiful tree. If you get on the property, it's behind shelter number 2, I believe. There's picnic shelters, and it's right next to a picnic shelter. Again, well worth the trip. Big ugly leaves on it, but it has, sometimes these trees have values, and these are the ones that many of the Far Eastern culture use for carving the pictures. It's a corky kind of bark, and they carve it and do artwork out of it. And it can be really beautiful artwork, but they don't grow that big around here because often they're stolen. And I've seen that happen too on some of these trees, but this is a lovely example. I'm hoping it stays there a long time as well. This is one of our national champions in Montgomery County. It's a Zelkova, again, a more or less naturalized tree. And this actually was, when I went back and to see why is this tree here, because I couldn't figure out what put this tree here. It's not a native indigenous tree. And I did find out that one of the owners of the house worked at the Beltsville Agricultural Center when the house was built, which is in the early 1900s, and probably got a hold of a seed or a cultivar or whatever and propagated this tree. And at 337 points, it's a magnificent tree. And if any of you have ever been to Brookside Gardens, which I hope you all have, Phil Normandy, who was the head horticulturist there, had nominated this tree. And he went around and helped Joe and I measure it. And we got a picture of the family that now owns it. And they are particularly proud of this tree. I actually have written to Delaware because the state of Delaware claims that they have one that's 100 points larger. I haven't seen it, but I said, how come you haven't nominated it yet? I think I pushed that button, but I was a little hesitant because I didn't want to take it away from this family, but fair is fair. So I'm hoping that it keeps the state status here, but it may keep the national champion if Delaware doesn't nominate it. So I'll be interested to see what happens this fall with it. This is the last tree I want to show you today, and I saved this one for my favorite tree. Everyone usually by the end, one of the first questions is, what's your favorite tree? And this is the Goshen elm that's in Gaithersburg. It's on Goshen Road and Rock Elm Way. This tree has had numerous ID. This tree has had numerous limbs fall out, but one day I somehow, I don't know how, got an email from a man who said, I want to know if your tree is bigger than my elms. And Joe and I happened to be going out the next day and measuring this tree. And I wrote the man back and I said, we just measured. And he said, oh, yours at 431 winds. And I went, great. So then I was curious. So I had to make a trip to England, and I was able to visit 2 trees that were planted about the same time during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. And one has now come down. They're called the Preston twins, and it's easy to look up. And we spent the day together in Brighton Hove area looking at all different kinds of elms. And he started an elm society, which I'm now a member, even though I'm no elm expert. We believe this was probably a marker for some kind of mill or some type of property. And probably he believes by the tissue cultures that we've taken that the tree actually grew in Kent, England, and was probably brought over as a tree and planted. We don't have an exact year, but it is now a county park, which is great. There was a developer who came in who bought all this land. One man nearby said, we've got to save this tree. He bought that lot and donated it to the county. So it's now called Goshen Elm Park. Well, after I talked with this man in England, we discovered that this was the world's largest known English elm in the world. And that, I mean, talk about knocking socks off. It's just a fantastic tree. It's a beautiful tree. A big branch came out of it at one point, and the county took the branch, took it over to the outdoor education center and made it into a jungle gym at the playground there for the students to come and play. So that tree's kind of living out its life here, and we're still working on taking care of it. You can see the circumference 295, which is big, but this is a must-see tree. Take a picnic. There are benches there. Enjoy it. Go up and touch it. It's just a marvelous example of tree. The county even moved the power lines to the other side of the road. And if you all recall, was it last year when that plane flew into the power wires? It was very near this tree. And of course, I never lost electricity. I'm in Washington Grove, but I never lost electricity. But I was holding my breath that when I was watching this on television, that I wouldn't see that tree nearby, because I was so afraid, not only for the pilot and his passenger, but for this tree. So my mind's kind of a little bit off track, but this is really a magnificent example. And in fact, the picture on the bottom left, all that lower growth has now been cut off, because that's growth that's not necessary to the tree. It's a sucker kind of growth and weakens it. So the county's very good about taking care of this tree. So I just wanted to give you, there's the Goshen elm again. I just had to put in one more, and there's Joe at the bottom of it, way down there. Really worth the time to go see. And there is a marker saying it's the world's largest known. And the man in England even said to me, now, you should be able to go and see what houses are still there. And because in England, things are 800 years old. And I just started busting out laughing. I said, there's nothing around this tree but new development. But anyway, it's been a great experience. And I've linked up with a botanical artist who's now did work on this tree, and I helped him collect the specimens, and another tree that's on the mall last week I did for him. And so these good relationships are building on an international level. It's a really fun tree. So that's my program. I wanted to go over it with you, and I'm glad to take any questions or have any comments. I would really appreciate hearing them, and I would really like to hear from you if you know of a big tree. Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
No, it's okay. So how do I get this back? So
Stop sharing.
I don't know. Ken's back. There we go.
Did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask, or I could start reading those that are in the chat?
Can I ask a quick question about the Goshen elm?
Sure.
I noticed that it seemed like it split off and there was trunks in the middle.
Right.
So is that normal for that kind of tree where it kind of separates into different trunks?
Yes, that did look to me a little bit like sucker growth, that very straight, tall, fast growing thing that if it's not small and on the sides, we tend to leave it on, because it does give the tree some middle structure if it starts to thin out, or may not be the ideal growth. But we only started caring for this tree in the county maybe 30-40 years ago. So it was privately owned, and we do know the family names and who owned it, but we do not know how it was cared for before the county got it.
Okay. It's amazing.
It's a great tree.
Amazing. I want a little map of all these trees so we can take a Sunday drive.
Oh, we can make arrangements for that kind of thing.
That would be cool, I think.
Yeah. I have been trying to work on a map, but we have the issue of privacy issues versus public. So I can make this really big map of the county where they're all located, but then I'd have to delete those ones. And so if you get, you can do directions on your maps, like Google Maps. You can put in coordinates and get directions and space between, but that's about the best way to do it for now. So
very interesting.
I can see some in the chat. So someone's asking me how old it is. And I will say this, we do not age trees. There are websites that do that, but it depends on the location, the setting, how dry, how wet, how fast the tree grows. A white oak is much slower than a sawtooth oak, for example. So we personally don't put ages on them, but we do like to let people know that we recognize it's an old tree. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the rings on it. Of course, when a tree comes down, even on the linden oak, the county is going to give me a couple of tree cross cuttings that I'm looking for, to ban so that they don't crack, and then see if I can count the rings to see if we could get an accurate age on that tree. I hope that answers the question. So we don't age it, but yeah, I see a hand up.
Hi,
Hi, Joli.
Oh,
I actually manage help manage the the cemetery that the state champion fir tree is, and I thought it was
Oh.
a Douglas fir.
We did for many years. We thought it was a Douglas fir. And Stan, the long story is that it's short, is I had 4 or 5, how many champions can you have? champions? I don't know. And we got Phil Normandy to come out and he ID'd it and changed the ID of it. So Nat scooted it up to number 1 and scooted the other out of the pictures. But that now we've been told that that's what it is. And I need to go with whatever they came up with.
Is that the biggest in the state?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I believe it is the
Good.
biggest Norman fir. Yeah.
And where is the state champion? I call them tulip trees, but you call them yellow poplars.
Yellow poplar. That one is in the only area. I had the BT number on there. It's in a little section of Olney where all the street names are Saint somebody, St. Patrick,
Oh.
Saint that, and you've got to walk down to a little ravine to get to it. It's an easy walk. But if you go to the website and you can filter down on
Yeah.
the trees and put
Sure.
your yellow poplar in and then put in the county and it'll narrow it down and you'll probably see it.
Thank you.
If you don't, Stan, call me and I'll be glad to.
Okay.
A monster.
So
Yeah.
there's a giant silver maple tree at lot 26. You didn't
Yes.
mention this
Yes.
evening.
Yes,
So it's in ill health. It has a
yes.
red circle on it. So I assume the park's going to take it down. Now, Are
yeah.
you involved with anything like helping to create a plaque that here was once the giant silver maple tree? And I understand up at Williamsport, they started growing 7 saplings. They're going to transplant some, but I don't know what the status is. And you may have better connections at the park than I do.
Okay, I'm gonna find out about that. I've not heard about that. We have again measured that tree 3 times in the last 20 years. It's definitely going down. And in fact, I worked with the Poolsville students at that magnet environmental program. I took them out there and was teaching them how to measure a tree. And I was shocked how many points it had lost. So it's definitely on its way out. It's not a very, very old tree because they grow incredibly fast.
Right.
And it wasn't there probably during the Civil War. I mean, there is a picture where a house was there. I can't tell whether it's
Yeah, that was the lock house.
yes,
And that picture was about 1900. So the tree was a sapling.
yes.
So the lock keepers at the time was Charles and Columbia Wood. So
Okay.
they possibly planted, and they were there about that time.
Yeah, could very well be. We don't know, but I am going to call them. We have a good relationship with the National Park Service, and I will do that. I did not know that they'd taken the seeds. I think that's great. That tree has so much character to it. It's just a charming tree.
Yep. And then I wonder, like the linden oak tree, they're going to, I don't know, sell, or they're going to sell some of the wood or
What
make
they
things
can't-
out of it.
Yeah, they're going to take it all out to what's the name of the nursery? Pope Nursery. The remains are going to be taken out, and starting a couple of years ago, I think they were trying to do this, and COVID got in the way of everything, of course. They now are selling off some of this wood, and they put the champion tree wood aside, and people come in and bid on it and take the planks. And we do have one company that is making pieces of art and tables, et cetera, out of some of these champion trees and makes a donation to us for each piece that he
So-
sells, because we run on a shoestring budget.
So
So,
it seems to me the national park could do something with that maple tree similar to that.
yeah, I don't know if they do. I've never talked to them about it, but I'm gonna jot that down too. So I'll. flip-
And you can mention you were talking to me. 'Cause
Okay,
I've asked them about that tree and I don't get anywhere with them.
really?
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting, huh? The fact that it has a circle on it right now, maybe it does mean it's kind of, but we don't have control. Montgomery County is the only county in the state that has any sort of protection for champion trees. And anyone can do anything they want with a tree. And if you want to take down your champion tree, you just have to mitigate at a much different rate. So I don't think the park has to follow our state laws as much as you
I'm
probably
sure
well
they
know. But I certainly wouldn't mind making a call and finding out more about it, so I can give it a try.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also see in the chat, maple trees that produce helicopters are considered invasive. Yes, the Norway maples are now considered non-native and invasive. I wouldn't cut one down if I had one, but I wouldn't plant one if I had a choice. Put it that way. I think that, I mean, I have my grandfather's swing was, you know, on a Norway maple. I don't think it's there anymore. They are prolific. We do have a champion up in Darnestown, I think it is. Not a very pretty tree, but the owner really loves it. So, you know, who am I to say? But it does, they are considered invasive at this point. And then, oh, Stan, I see, oh, wait, is it true that if woodpeckers are loving a tree's disease? No, it's not. Woodpeckers like live wood and dead wood because of the bugs. I have pawpaw trees. They love those warblers, love to get around the pawpaw trees and dig and eat the bugs. They also love the bugs from the rotting trees. So it's a little bit of both. It doesn't mean your tree's diseased. And if you want somebody to come out and look at that tree, don't call a tree remover, call an arborist, because a tree removing company is going to give you a slightly more profitable answer.
Nicely put.
And then, okay, so I talked to Stan. I see your point here is a cemetery. Yeah, Stan, if you're involved with that cemetery, let them know, because I don't know if I ever talked to them and let them know. So please do.
No, that's in our St. Rose of Lima history book. I'll have to let them know. We can change that.
Okay, well, if you need the pro, I can get a hold of Phil Normandy did that. I can get a hold of him as why he chose that selection. If you need a
Okay.
on it, I'll be glad to do
Yeah,
that.
thankful. Be glad
Yeah.
to do it.
Okay, then Tookie, did I understand you to say that trees have to compete with nearby trees? Yeah, well, yeah, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, if all trees are in the woods, they're all going to grow higher to get to the light, right? They're not going to ignore going wide, but they're going to take advantage of what's around them or not. So an open tree specimen is going to have probably a broader, wider spread to it than one in the woods.
Mhm.
That's a really simple answer to a long studied question.
I'm simple. That's good.
Oh, yes, the lone oak. Oh, boo-hoo. Yes, that was a champion tree. We've measured it several times. And in fact, when Sam Eig owned that tree, who's the Eig Highway is named after, when he sold that property, the county took it over for a short period of time, just the tree. And then the company who bought the brewery wanted it back. So it was negotiated. I wasn't involved in that. It was really sad, and they based that whole brewery on it. And then they went ahead and nominated it, and I was able to call and say, hey, it's already in the program. So they were very, very happy with it. They offered me a free beer, but now I don't have the nerve to go up there and drink it because the tree's on the ground. Maybe one of these days I'll go after and say, hey, Chris, you know, here I am. But that was a sad loss, and that tree was a gorgeous, again, one of those open wide, that classic white oak shape that we get in Maryland. Oh, Ralph, you're too sweet. Okay, so I did discuss the aging. Okay, interesting. Still looking for. Oh yeah, our champion pawpaw. We had a champion pawpaw, which was a national champion, and it was in, was it C&O Canal or Macrillis Gardens, one of the two, and both of those trees are gone now and are taken out during the Isabel storm. And we lost a couple other champion trees. The one that was at Woodlawn, where the tree landed also, was our little leaf linden state champion, and that was lost too. So we do have a pawpaw that's in the Burtonsville area that's now the champion. It's on private property. It's a pretty ugly tree. If you know of one, please let me know, because we really need a good replacement. And then we have it's Fred Besley. Fred Besley is no longer live. He was not involved in the roadside tree law. That's a much later, that's from the Montgomery County Forestry conservation laws that were mandated by the state that each county has to pass. So no, he was not involved. He was a little bit involved with, is it Vanderbilt? No, was it Vanderbilt who did the estate in Asheville, North Carolina?
Yes.
Yeah, he was involved in that land and the starting of that land as well. But he really was dedicated to Maryland. And so they actually, I have one page, but there are atlases that he had printed up from the early 20s of where everywhere he studied the wooded sections of each county. And I have one from Montgomery County, and he covered a magnificent area of the county. So I'm really pleased to have been given that page. So anyway, I don't know if I can see any, did I answer everybody's questions?
Let me see, I'm looking. It looks like Tookie wanted to know if it was bad that the Empress tree had a hole in it.
Yes, it's hollow. A lot of trees get hollow. I mean, sycamores, you can, if you've ever, what is it, where my side of the mountain where the kid ran away and lived in a tree or something, they're notoriously hollow. And very often they don't last in windstorms, but they like it really wet. So they, but the insides can be completely gone. If anyone goes out to the sycamore, that state champion sycamore, there's a tree on the path that's completely hollow. You get in there. If you take a flashlight, all these little eyes will look down to these spiders live in it. And all these spider eyes just, it's really kind of eerie, but they're really, that's very common to have them rotted out or rotting out at this age, because that hardcore is sometimes even gone. So when they start to rot out, they can still last a very long time. Trees traditionally, if they die on their own, die very slowly. And we've had a lot with oaks lately where they're dying within a few weeks. That's not the oak blight. It's not in this area, but they do tend to react strongly to these hot, cold freezes where it's freezing and then it's hot, and it's freezing, it's hot. And that does destroy a lot of the inner tissue of the tree and does pretty significant damage. So they think that's one of the reasons why we're losing a lot of the white oaks in this area.
And
I
it
had a
looks like,
question
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, how do you measure the circumference? Where do you measure it? How would you know what part of the trunk
We actually
to
take
choose?
the tape and we put it
Right.
on the ground and we put our foot on it literally and go up to 4.5 feet. And then we do it.
Okay, so there is a specific place,
Yes.
because I wasn't sure
Yeah.
of how would you choose where to measure things?
Yeah, well, if it's
Okay.
on a slope, we want to do the midpoint,
Right, okay,
Mhm.
so 4.5
So
feet, okay,
that's it sounds easier than it is, but it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
hard either. I mean, I've been on some where we're hanging off cliffs and I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that.
Yeah, no,
I'm done with
Thank
that
you.
part.
yeah, not that crazy.
Yeah. I was for a while, I'll tell you that much.
Thank
I
you.
think I knew you then.
Yeah, I think you took it. Oh, God. We're gonna start laughing. We're not gonna. Oh, Lordy. All right, anything else?
Well,
Okay.
I think everybody should unmute and give Jolie a big hand.
Thank you.
And
Thank
a
you.
big
Jolie.
thank you for being with us.
Nice
this
presentation.
evening. Jolie,
Yeah,
as usual.
so interesting, so interesting.
If you want,
Very interesting. Thank you.
if you go on the website, either the state of the county and you nominate a tree, I'm the one that gets it. So we'll look into it. You can even put on there, heard your program, saw this tree. Is it part of your program or not? So we'll go from there.
Perfect.
All right,
Thanks, Julie.
okay, we're getting together soon.
Good. So the other thing I want to do tonight before we leave is I think that we should all give our host, Kelly Parker, a big hand tonight. Unfortunately for us, is the last night that she's going to be hosting with us. She has new endeavors on her horizon and she has been great and we love her and it's a great loss. So Kelly, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Kelly, we are
Thank
you.
sad.
I still live in town.
I know.
So,
We expect to see you around town.
Well, we can set up lunches at locals. I know I'll see you there often.
That sounds good.
And then
Thank
just
you
a
so
couple,
much.
just a couple of other announcements. Our movie this month is missing. No, the movie itself is not missing. It is the movie missing. And we have line dancing coming up on Friday night, the 20, whatever the last
28th.
28th. Thank you, Denise. So Friday the 21st is the movie fight. Friday the 28th is line dancing. And of course, we have all of our regular programs and activities. And we thank you all for participating tonight and all the times that you participate. And I just can't hang up without saying, remember, our annual appeal is now live. You can donate
That's right.
anytime you want by going to our website. Thank you so very much. We love having you, Jolie. We loved having you, and we'll have to get together with Miss Nancy, Miss iPad soon and get really back together. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, very
Good night.
enlightening.
This was great.
Thank
Enjoy the
you.
summer.
Very
Stand
good.
out.